blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium. Views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. Good afternoon and welcome to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, broadcasting from behind these enemy lines that I call USA Inc. Today is a Thursday afternoon. It is October the 6th, 2016. So we only have a few more months left in this year. And I know it's been said a lot, but time just really seems to go by. I guess when you're approaching 50 years old like I am, time does seem to just go by too fast as we get older, and we don't want to get older. All right, we want to stay on this planet as long as possible until we can at least abolish slavery once and for all in this country. So welcome to the broadcast. Let me give the telephone numbers out for those who would like to call in and make a comment, observation, share observation, or ask a question. And then we'll get into what we will be discussing on today's broadcast of Black Talk Radio News. Okay, the telephone numbers. Actually, there's only one number today, as Skype will not allow me to connect to it. So if you're using Skype, you might have come across some issues with Skype today. Because I'm certainly having issues with it. It just says it cannot connect. So we won't be able to open up the 7-digit studio line for those that like to call in on that line or hit us up through Skype. But we do have the conference room open, and you can give us a call at 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032#. Hit *6 and 1 if you would like to comment on air. Also, you can also make comments through our YouTube chat room, as we are live streaming on YouTube now, just trying to extend our reach, where we do have about 4,000 YouTube subscribers. And, that's just another way for us to reach the masses. So you can ask questions through that chat room. I'll be checking it from time to time to see if there's any questions or interesting comments that I think is worthy of sharing on air. I won't say any names in case anybody wants to remain in anonymity and what have you. Let's get into today's program. First, I want to give you some network news for tonight, usually on Thursdays on blacktalkradionetwork.com and on the digital radio station Black Talk Radio. We usually do at least 5 hours of live broadcasting, sometimes 6 hours. It just depends on how long I do Black Talk Radio News, because usually at the first of the month I'm working on reports, and I just have one more report to get out, and that's our social media reach report to the donors of the Black Talk Media Project, those who help sustain our media operations and expand them. Like we're doing, through our YouTube broadcast that we have added in addition to the digital radio. So today I'm going to do 2 hours because Tando Radio Show, as well as Blacks in Business Radio, will not be live tonight. Both of the personnel associated with hosting that program have business engagements that were very important, and they couldn't get out of them, and there was no way for them to do like a remote broadcast or anything like that. So Tando Radio Show, BIB Radio, you can check them out. Well, actually Tando should be on live tomorrow, but BIB Radio, they said they'll catch up with the Black Talk Radio listening audience next week. Okay, so that's some of the network news I already mentioned. The social media report, that's the last report that I have to get out to those who make our media operations possible. Again, most all of our media operations are funded by the people through the North Carolina-based nonprofit Black Talk Media Project. So check out blacktalkmediaproject.org. We also have business services there for those who would like affordable digital radio streams. We have both Shoutcast and Icecast streams that we can provide you. All right. And we also have digital radio engineering services. And so check out some of those. If you're not interested in any of the businesses, please consider making a donation. We got the Black Radio Station Matter t-shirts that we give as thank you gifts to those who contribute $25 or more to the Black Talk Media Project. Let me just quickly go over some of the items that are on the calendar, activity calendar in BTRcommunity.com, which is a social media platform created by the Black Talk Media Project to provide yet another safe digital space for Black people online, a way for them to come together and network and on all sorts of issues, whether it's business, whether it's organizing around social issues, what have you. That is why we've set this up. Plus, to provide you with a bit of more security, as we do not serve up ads or anything like that, so we have no need to data mine information from the users of the platform. So that's BTRcommunity.com. In the event section of BTRcommunity.com, got a couple of events that's happening. Let me see. Charge Killer Cops Gascon, that is going to go down at the Hall of Justice at 850 Bryant Street in San Francisco, California. They are asking, the people are asking that you join them for a people's protest to demand that the District Attorney George Gascon charge a killer cop. And you can find out the details by just clicking on that entry. It'll get you to some of the details and you can look it up. October the 19th, Leading Voices, Valerie Gray's Pressure Makes Diamonds Becoming the Woman. It is, I believe, a conversation. This isn't online. This is a conversation that's going to be held in Philadelphia, PA. So you got plenty of time to make arrangements, make plans for our listeners in the Philadelphia area. Shout out to Brother Elliot and Brother Reggie, A Time for Awakening Radio, which you hear on this network every Sunday as they broadcast from Philadelphia. Okay, October the 21st will be the first annual convention of 1 million conscious Black voters and contributors. This will be their first national convention that will be held in Atlanta, Georgia. You can go to the website. Let me just explain what 1 of the million means. What it is a movement to build a conscious Black voter political bloc, which is also a movement that's going to be financed through Black businesses. So that's why it is called Conscious Black Voters and Contributors. The business owners and the people are the contributors. And so just trying to do what other people do in the people activity area of politics in the United States when they set up these lobbying groups, whether we're talking about corporations coming together to form the American legislative exchange and push all of that 21st century slavery legislation out to the states and representatives in Congress and what have you, or whether you're talking about a religious group like the Jews who have APAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee. So it is not that they're doing anything different than anyone else. And this, I would say, is working towards a culmination of one of the things that Malcolm X pointed out when he gave his speech, in that speech, The Ballot or the Bullet. And he talked about black voters, those who participate. Everybody don't participate, and that's not just true among black people, but all people. The majority of the people do not vote. But for those who do, you have to become politically mature. Malcolm X talked about that. You can't be given something and getting nothing in return. And unfortunately, for the past 40 years, that seems to be how we have played the game politically. While we have these different organizations, they are not really operating like political action committees or these other political organizations that come together and even write legislation and what have you. Now, I don't want to play down any efforts and any legislative success anybody's had over the past 40 years and the people who helped make that happen, but I would say, the vast majority of black voters are not always on the same page. And so this, I feel, is just trying to get people who participate in actually two activity areas, that is economics as well as politics. So on October the 21st will again be the 1 Million Conscious Black Voters and Contributors National Convention, and that'll be going down in Atlanta, Georgia. All right. There's some other stuff posted for some other months, but that's all that's posted in October. Remember, if you are a member of the BTR community platform, btrcommunity.com, it doesn't cost you anything to post your events, and we want to know about these events that's happening around the country where black people and can come together on these various issues, or for economic collaboration, or to enjoy the arts and history, whatever it is, we want to help you get that word out through the station. But of course, you got to post it to btrcommunity.com for us to know about it. Or you can email me, as some people do. They email me through blacktalkradionetwork.com about an upcoming event. I don't charge people anything to as long as it is something constructive. I'm not, if it's not constructive, then don't even bother sending it to me. So if you got a gangster rap concert coming up, Scotty don't want to hear about it, okay? All right, so I think that we'll do it on the network news. Let's move into some of the topics for today. The main topic that I want to discuss, but I'm not going to start with it, but just to give you a preview of what I want to discuss. There was an article that was shared in btrcommunity.com by one of the members, I believe, or I may have seen it on Twitter. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's in BTR community. Every story I'm going to talk about is on my profile, Scotty T. That's how you can find me on btrcommunity.com. And my profile is public. It's not private. So even if you're not a member, you can still check the sources and what have you. Okay, so but the main topic I want to talk about is who funded the African American History and Culture Museum that's on the Washington Mall in Washington, D.C. Who funded it and why? And I'm thankful that the funding came through. And it was good to see two black billionaires topping the list of those who gave the most, who really, put their money where their mouth is and wanted to see what they felt like was a very important endeavor happen. And so they donated some funds. So that would be billionaire Robert F. Smith, who operates he's an investor. I forget the name of his company. I forget the name of his company. I'll pull that up later. He's invested in a whole bunch of technology companies. I never heard of this man. His work is impressive. The work, of this company that he founded, and they're invested in a whole lot of technology companies. And I've never heard of this man. So he donated $20 million, and then Oprah Winfrey, she gave $21 million. So those two, I want to just personally thank them after I gotten that report, because I had cause for pause when I heard about the museum opening up, because for the most part, with all they teach here in the United States, and I'm talking about public schools and probably private schools as well, and even in the public media that you see, like PBS and NPR, they usually start our history as a people. I'm talking about Afro-descended people, African-descended people, whether they were free or whether they were brought here as victims of slavery and what have you. Our history, it did not just start. All of us are not descendant of enslaved victims, okay? And that's just something that is taught too much, and too many quote unquote smart black people don't even use critical thinking skills. You can tell that they have not studied the true history of this country, or the true history of the world for that matter, when they think that our history as black people started in this country as coming off of a boat. And that's just simply not true. And so I had my concerns about what would be shown in this museum, and thankfully, a listener who lives in the area who went to the museum emailed me and told me that no, they didn't start it at slavery. They went all the way back to the American Revolution, and every war that black folks, free or enslaved, prior to 1865, and again, many of us are still enslaved today, but they're not serving in the military. But all of these wars could not have been won without black guns, and that was portrayed in that museum. Now, that's all he got to really look at. This is a huge museum with tens of thousands of objects and what have you, historical objects donated by families and what have you, or procured from other museums. And so that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Cause so how often have we heard the sound bite that if you don't know your past, if you won't know your future. If you don't study the past, then what did Malcolm X say? Those who study the past are preparing for the future. I'm probably messing up that quote, but he said something similar to that. And it is very important that we get the real history. And so that we don't be walking around talking about we suffering from post-traumatic slave disorder or whatever. And then you ain't even know, none of your ancestors was ever enslaved. You might have been a descendant of a free Afro-American who came to this colony after traveling from Africa, going to Europe, as many of the ruling class of Europe in a certain time period in their early history were ruled by black people. I mentioned Queen Charlotte, whom Charlotte is named after, Charlotte, North Carolina. And so how you going to talk about you got some post-traumatic stress disorder and you ain't even the descendant of no enslaved African? Now, that's just a theory. And we shouldn't just buy into theories because they sound good or what have you. That's doing an entire disservice. That's like erasing all these free black people and all their contributions from history, just wiping them out. That's what you doing when you limit our history. I'm talking black folks now. When you limit our history just to slavery. Okay? So we had to take the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all of it so that we can get a more complete picture, okay, of our existence as explorers of the world and colonizers ourselves as the world. But I hate to use the word colonize, but we did set up colonies all over the planet, but it was not done through force. Okay, I don't want to go back that far in history, but I want to know though why these other corporations donated money. I mean, this was a long effort. Again, veterans of the Civil War, black veterans of the Civil War, in 1919 first tried to have this built, and just kept, of course, them racist suspects in Congress singing the slavers' anthem, pledging allegiance to the slavers' anthem and the flag and all of that. No, they don't want black folks or anybody else for that matter to know that they were not just enslaved Africans and that this nation would not exist without black contributions. All right. So that's why it took this long for it to come about. And in the past, they had trouble with acquiring funding. So there's a bunch of companies that contributed millions of dollars to this project. And while I'm glad the project was done, I'm still going to point out which of those companies is practicing slavery today by using prison slave labor, okay, and then not hiring people out on the street who may have been in prison and had that felony status. But you will hire them, like Walmart, who is one of the funders of the African American Museum, uses prison slave labor to, like, when people do returns of gifts or any kind of product, they have to repackage that type of stuff. They use prison slave labor for that. So again, our history is always being written. And unfortunately, nowhere in the United States history has slavery been abolished. It's just went through refinement, as I've heard other people use that term to describe it, which I think is accurate. So it's never been abolished legally. When the Constitution talks about the 13th Amendment, that's one of the other stories we'll touch upon, as that movie 13th will be out on Netflix tomorrow. So I want to know why they funded it. And I got some ideas of why they funded it. And so y'all think about that question too. Again, I've linked to these, the founding donors, as they are called. And so take a look at that. Take a look at that. Now, I know why this man, billionaire Robert F. Smith, donated $20 million, because he had a vested interest in the true history of his ancestors and their contributions to this nation, the establishment of this nation, the establishment of the colonies. He wants that history to be known and told. This is a counter-racist museum. So racists who have been brainwashed all their lives to think that, the whole universe centers around them and they did all these great things and nobody helped them do it, or they did it all by their lonesome. And that's just simply not true. So, again, I was very concerned, but based off the report I heard from an actual visitor, I'm happy that this happened. All right, so do want to get into some of the other stories before we hit our first break. I just got a couple of news items of the day that I would like to share with you before we get to our main topic, depending upon today's participation, because I do have work I could be doing. I'll either go 2 hours or as long as it takes for me to get through all this information. But don't be shy if you have a question or comment. And I mean, you don't have to agree with anything I'm saying. That's fine. That's fine. Agreement is not necessary. But if you want to question me for clarification on this or clarification on that, or how did I come to this conclusion, or what's the logic that I'm using to explain whatever it is I'm explaining, by all means, feel free to give us a call. So that telephone number is 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549032#. Then just hit *6 and 1 if you would like to comment on air. Again, apologies. I shouldn't apologize because it's not my product, so it's not my fault. But our Skype studio line, Skype is down, can't access it, so the studio line is not open. Okay, and then again, shout out to those who tune in to who are tuning in to the station through the YouTube stream, which we just started. Actually, here's an interesting comment. I wasn't going to bring this up because I go off on tangents the way my mind works, because there's so much information connected to so much, and then there's so much propaganda out there. But we got a person saying all Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the true Hebrew Israelites. African American is a byword started by Jesse Jackson. I'm not going to use the derogatory term to refer to Mr. Jackson, as unless I'm talking about racist suspects, I'm not going to engage in name calling of people. African American is a word that denotes, the definition of that word means an African descended person who is American citizen as well. You can claim to be this, you can claim to be all of that, but if they're taking taxes out your money, out your paycheck, or if you're paying property taxes, or if you're paying to have these get your vehicle registered, I mean, you are subject to all the rules and regulations as everybody else. You may not want to be a citizen, but you are a citizen. I don't want to be a citizen. I don't refer to myself as an African American. Okay, I refer to myself as black, which I've heard people complain about, people calling themselves black and say, no, we're Moors. We're Moors. And then I look up the definition of Moor, and Moor is a European word for black, or to denote someone of African descent, just simply referring to the hue of their skin and what have you. So, this Hebrew Israelite, I hear people talk about it, and I just don't really have an interest in it, because it's, to me, it's like any other religion or group, or I don't care what you call yourself. We're all still subject. If you're black, if you're a melanated person, I don't care what you call yourself. You still subject to racism in this country. You still can and will be enslaved in this country. I'm talking about legalized slavery. And you could point to treaties, you can point to whatever you want to point to. You're talking about treaty breakers. Okay, you're talking about treaty breakers. When do these people ever keep their word on anything? Treaties are it's like they're signing them with their fingers crossed behind their back. So, all these different designations and these pissing contests that people want to get into about what a person should call themselves, it's just not constructive. Call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. And I will call you what you want me to call you, out of respect of your right to self-determination. So I feel like in order to keep down confusion, as well as to keep down unnecessary conflict, stop with this petty squabbling over a term, what somebody call themselves. Because everybody that's black, African American, Hebrew Israelite, I'm looking at them black Jews over there in Israel now getting sterilized. Their population cut in half, so they call themselves, some of them do, call themselves Hebrew Israelites. How does that save them from genocide? It has not. The exterminated Indian tribes here, I shouldn't say Indian, indigenous tribes. I mean, there are tribes that were totally wiped out. Totally wiped out. Don't matter what they called themselves or the connection to the land that they had, did not save them from genocide and having their land stolen. So I'm just all about being real. I'm not focused on what other people call themselves. Either you an ally or you an enemy. It's that simple. Which are you? Otherwise, I don't care about these petty squabbles. You should have respect for other people to have self-determination and refer to themselves however they want to refer themselves. I mean, this is really bringing up something that I came across last night on some social media. And I mean, just foolishness. Black people squabbling over black history and picking at black people who have a connection to Africa. And they talk about Kemet or the pyramids or Africa being their ancestral home. And I mean, they're being ridiculed for that. Why? Do they ridicule white people who talk about their, because all white people, they have different nationalities or ancestral homelands, as they call them. Do white people sit up there? You ain't in Ireland. You in America now. You ain't no Irish American. You just American. Or you Gaelic or whatever tribal name they have. I guarantee you these poor crackers, and I call them crackers, I'm referring to the racists. That's just a southern word. Some crackers call themselves crackers. But I bet you these poor crackers around here in these trailer parks is not sitting around at each other's throat over how they're referring to themselves. They ain't having that conversation. They ain't ridiculing each other for any kind of attachment that they have to their ancestral homelands or how they're self-identifying. I mean, I'm reminded of what Professor Cambon, I think it's Professor Cambon who said that. Professor Cambon who said, our people are very serious about not being very serious. Now, I'm not going to apply that label broadly to every single person on this earth, but there is a large majority of us who get bogged down in the nonsense. So anyway, on the other side, I will come this break. I'm going to jump into some of the news stories that I feel you should know about. Of course, we can't cover everything, but we try to pick out what we feel like is important and share that news with you. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, broadcasting every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time right here on Black Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned.
The Black Talk Media Project funds the use of new media technology in efforts to restore independent Black voices to the myriad of issues affecting Afro-descendant people all over the planet. If media can control the minds of the masses, as Malcolm X once said, then you must ask yourself, who is in control of the media targeting the masses of Black people today? Help bring back independence, self-determination, and respect for Black culture in the production of global media by joining the effort to crowdfund new Black media for the new millennium. Visit blacktalkmediaproject.org for more information on how you can invest in public Black radio for the masses.
And welcome back to Black Talk Radio News. Again, broadcasting live to you from the Black Talk Radio Network, providing you with new Black media for the new millennium. Got plenty of podcasts, hundreds, probably over 1,000 or so podcasts from independent Black media producers. Not only will you find this radio station streamed on blacktalkradionetwork.com, but you'll also find the radio streams or digital radio stations of other independent Black media producers. And so that's what we're all about. Through the Black Talk Media Project, is taking control of the media that is about us. I mean, if we not producing it, then we ain't in control of our stories. And if you ain't in control of your story, then you'll be running around thinking that every single Black person in the United States is descendant of an enslaved African. Not that there's any shame to that. Your ancestors were victimized, but that is not all our entire story. These people been lying to us, and you really have to do some digging to find out, your personal story as well as our collective story. They do not want you to be empowered by knowing about all the great things your ancestors did and how they would not be where they are right now without us. okay, this country would not even exist. It'd still be probably, another colony of Britain or something like that. All right, so let's get to some of the news stories that I want to share with you today. Let me pull up my profile on btrcommunity.com. Again, that is a new online black social experience. If you like social media and you're black and you want to contribute to independent black, the creation of independent black media networks, then by all means join us. So let me get to some of the other news before we jump to our main topic. I want to take you to stopthedrugwar.org. That's stopthedrugwar.org. And we're just going to take a look at the corrupt cop stories of the day. And I'm going to start making this a daily segment, or at least in the news that I share. I think it only comes out like once a week. So, but I'm going to make sure that I share it. It's not that I think everybody who puts on the uniform of a slave catcher went into it with the intentions of being a slave catcher or a tax collector by writing people tickets to raise taxes outside of sales taxes and income taxes and property taxes. They always trying to put their hand in your pocket. So I'm not painting them all with a broad brush, but the truth is the truth. The history is the history. We know they come out of the slave patrols and what have you. So we gotta deal with them correctly when we're talking about them, what they do in the institution that they are a part of. But before I do that, we do got a couple of callers. I want to get to the callers before I get to some of these corrupt cop stories. And again, this has always been a flowing program. We do want to try to stick to the topics that I announce or discuss. But if it's something pertinent that you need to get out, by all means, I'll let you know if we need to move on. So let's go to the first caller, area code 414. Thank you for calling in to Black Talk Radio News. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Hey, good afternoon, Brother Scott. It's Rob chiming in from Milwaukee.
Hey, Rob, I haven't heard from you a while, man. How's everything going, considering the conditions we living under? I've been thinking, I had thoughts about you, man. I was just kind of concerned about, what you're going through. But how are you? Good to hear from you.
Man, I'm doing a little bit better, under these conditions, as well as to be expected at least. And I was listening to New Abolitionist Radio last night. I just didn't get a chance to call in.
Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you could speak more directly into the receiver so that we can make sure that everybody can hear you, because you're coming in just a little low.
Okay, can you hear me better?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. You were mentioning New Abolitionist Radio last night.
Yeah, I was listening to the program last night, but I didn't dial in. And I just wanted to, I had an observation, which you guys was talking about last night, about Black Talk Radio Network really being the only ones pushing a consistent, putting slavery out there consistently, as it should be, and not as mass incarceration and like that. So the observation that I had was from last week, and I thought this was very interesting. I was listening to Al Sharpton's show, and this had to have been like, I want to say Wednesday of last week, something like that. Anyway, he had a young black female on there. I think she was with the National Action Network. I don't remember her name. I want to say Mary Bell, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on the name.
Okay.
But when he had her on, she mentioned the prison strikes.
She did? That's good.
She also mentioned and she also mentioned the 13th Amendment. So I just wanted to just put that out there as an observation, and I did have one question for you as well.
Yes, sir.
You said that every black person is not a descendant from enslaved Africans, which I can agree with, and I understand that probably to be true. What I don't understand though is if there was free black people, quote unquote, whatever that even actually means. But if there was free black people back then, but any black person was like subject to the black codes or
Right.
basically any white person's authority. My question was how was there free black people back then, if that makes any sense?
I understand the question, so let me do my best to answer the question. I'm making a distinction between people who had the ability to move freely on this land and not confined to a plantation, not chained up, not beaten, not whipped. But you are correct. They have suffered racial terrorism. I have talked about that going back to the Virginia slave codes of the 1600s, which was the first piece of legislation that I identified in the colonies as starting to strip black colonists of their rights. And one of the things it said, it took away their right to stand their ground and defend themselves against assaults. If a quote unquote white person assaulted them, they could not defend themselves. If they retaliated with counter violence, they would be prosecuted while the white person would not. Okay. And then it also stripped them of their quote unquote Second Amendment rights. But granted, the Second Amendment wasn't even written yet. We're talking about the 1600s. So they put it in legislation that free black people couldn't own any firearms and what have you. So that is racial terrorism. So I'm making a distinction.
Gotcha.
I'm making a distinction between somebody who has the ability to leave, which many did. Many left and went to Africa and founded like Sierra Leone, which only this year I found out was a colony that was settled by quote unquote free black people or people who had attained their freedom and said, we got to get out of here. You know, I talked about Paul Coffey, who was Marcus Garvey before Marcus Garvey, who was actually more of a black nationalist than Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey was a Pan-Africanist, in my opinion. He wasn't talking about establishing a free black nation in Africa. Paul Coffey did, Sierra Leone, and then, of course, we know about Liberia, which came later. But so those people had the ability to move around. And see, this is why I also say it's very important for us to notice this history that has been uncovered. Paul Coffey was one of the quote unquote richest people during colonial times. And he owned a fleet of ships, and he owned like the largest fleet of ships, doing commercial trade and transporting goods and what have you. And he was the largest employer of quote unquote African Americans or free black people. And he was also an abolitionist. He used his wealth towards abolishing slavery. So can you see why I make a distinction between the two?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But, as I have even talked about recently this week, when I say black folks are owed reparations, I ain't limited to descendants of enslaved Africans. Racial terrorism, political disenfranchisement. They've been doing that since the 1600s. Again, so they've stolen property, they burnt down towns. I mean, they've just done all manner of evil. And like the recent UN panel that came here and was taking testimony that didn't really get a lot of mainstream coverage, but they just said that the United States, is their recommendation that the United States pay reparations, not just for enslaved Africans, but for racial terrorism, centuries of racial terrorism against all black life on the planet.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the question. Let me move on to the next caller. Give me just a second. Area code 719. Thank you for calling in the Black Talk Radio News. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Hello?
Yes.
Scotty?
Hey.
Scotty?
Yes, please. Go ahead. I can hear you.
This Ramon calling from the 719.
You seem to be
I
having some
wanted to
issues
pick
with
up.
audio as well, Ramon. I don't know if you could speak more loudly or directly. That might help with the audio. But go ahead, Ramon.
How about now, Scott? Can you hear me better?
Yeah, you're coming in still a
Oh,
little low, but I'll do some things on my end to boost up your audio. But go ahead.
I'll tell you what, Scotty. Let me call right back. I might be in a troubled area. Let me call right back, bro.
No, don't call back. We can hear you. It's just coming in a little low, and I can boost it up. All right. So go ahead with your question or
Okay.
comment.
Well, I was going to comment. You and I yesterday. You started about that Colorado stuff, and I told you on not time for awakening, but on with Brother Davis on yesterday with the
Yes.
Sando show. You told me call back in today. Try to elaborate on some of that. I caught what you were saying. I would say this though, Scotty. Maybe it's a good thing, and being from the state that legalized marijuana, I can honestly say I've seen some good things. But here's what I'll say: where it never fails. That here in Colorado, and I'm not, I know a couple of people myself got farms that provide to some of the dispensaries here.
Are they black
But
people? Because I heard black people. I don't know about Colorado, but they've been kind of shutting black folks out of those licenses.
I was that's why I was calling. We ain't getting any of that action. Matter of fact, there's only one black woman in the whole state that owns one out of Denver. So I just don't want people to be misled that, if they states are putting that on the ballot to be legalized, that's fine, And I also, had to tap my daughter on some of the things you said because she's in that age group, 17. And I asked her, I said, is it easier for y'all to get marijuana since these laws passed? She said, well, it was never not hard.
Right.
So to me, it didn't do none of that. All it did was just simply open up the doors for people to get money off of it that had already been getting money for locking us down with it.
Right.
So anybody has any illusions about, this is going to open it up and make it better, I'll agree. It has helped us to not probably depend so much on federal funding. Now, that's where I would go with that.
So that's true about the school. The schools are getting the funding like they're supposed to according to the laws.
I would say, Scotty, you're right, but here's what happened yesterday. My daughter brought home one of those federal funding grants for children of military parenting.
Okay.
Military parents.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times what I'm starting to realize is that money gets redirected over to their programs after reading this thing. You see what I'm saying? That's why they take that census or that survey. So it's still like we're not getting to touch the piece of the pie unless it's being distributed in some form, like maybe road work, some building going on here, and things like that. But it's not coming into the local neighborhoods.
Okay, so that is something let me say this. What do you think the biggest benefit of legalization is? And then I'll give you what I think the biggest benefit of it is for black people. So what do you think the biggest benefit?
Well, I'm going to say, before I say the benefit, I'm going to say one of the cons. My wife pulled out this one on me yesterday, and I actually had to applaud her for this. She said what marijuana did for Colorado was increase the homeless rate, because there's so many people come here in search of that find themselves not so well off after they thought they were coming to the land of green. If there's any benefits, once again, I'll go back to what I said. I do see it in the building. I believe that, it's helped for us to maintain our infrastructure, so we're using it in that way. That's a great thing. I won't deny that. But I'm going to still say this. It's not coming down to the neighborhoods where it's predominantly black.
Okay. And those are all valid economic issues, and people should be working on those issues. Like, that's an issue for black farmers. We got these several different black farmers organizations. Then we have these other business organizations, Black Chamber of Commerce and all this and that. So they aren't doing what it appears to me. I'm not going to say they aren't, because it could be things happening behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. And I have been seeing in the media people raising those issues with black folks not being able to get those licenses. And I think I read an article, don't quote me, I don't know if it's Colorado or another state, but those, because it was a lot of complaints about people who were had felonies from selling cannabis, did their time, got out, and now they're barred from getting the licenses. Now, I heard, I have to dig it up, but I heard that now, as a result of that criticism of the state, is that those people now are being pushed to the front of the line for those licenses. So nobody's just going to give us. Go ahead.
Hey, Scotty. Well, just to say, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but here's one I'll give you. This is a real experience for me. A friend of mine, as I just said, well, ex-friend, I'll put it that way, of the other color. He was, matter of fact, he was one of the guys that got it put on the field. I'll just put it that way. And he opened up his land to do just what we're talking about. Now, this guy himself, he told me out his own mouth, he had a past. You know, he had got caught up with, distributing, cocaine. He didn't have no problems.
He didn't?
And he's got 100 acres. He had no problem.
Is this a white person or a black person?
This is a white person. That's what I'm saying.
Well, again, let me say this, Ramon, before I get to my benefit. Okay, the number one benefit, I'm looking at it as an abolitionist, because my primary goal is to end slavery and bring relief to the people through getting them released from slavery or preventing them from going into slavery because of these ridiculous laws that have been put on the books strictly for the purpose of criminalizing people's behavior and using that legislation to target black people. So look, we've always had to fight. We've known that. Okay, now the law is what the law is. If people are being discriminated against in terms of getting these licenses or whatnot, well, it's time for us to pool our resources. We got lawyers, we got resources. Let's not act like we're helpless babies, and let's figure the problem out. How do we resolve this? Perhaps a class action litigation or what have you. We got to work. We know they're going to practice racism. Come on, bro. We know that from get-go, or at least we should always suspect that they gonna practice racism against us and try to prevent us from enjoying the fruits of our labor and all of the rights afforded to quote unquote citizens. Again, just got through talking about the history of black people being not afforded their full citizenship rights, but being forced to pay taxes, which Paul Coffey, who I mentioned early, actually took Massachusetts, and I probably butchered the name of that state. I always have a problem talking about saying that word of that state. But he filed a lawsuit and challenged these crackers, them racists back then, and said that, well, I'm not paying taxes. It's unlawful this is taxation without representation. He flipped the script on them, what they was using against the king. Now, did he win his case in court? No, but 2 years later, Massachusetts guaranteed the right to vote to all black and Native American citizens of that state. So he faced racism, but he fought it. So that's what we got to do. We got to know the problems, then we got to figure out the battle plan. We always expect them to practice racism, but we should not act like that's going to prevent us. Nobody can stop you from doing anything that you truly want to do is how I have always approached life. And but the benefit, I'm only looking at this from an abolitionist standpoint. I'm looking at the arrest. So now they can no longer arrest people 21 and over for possession, cultivation, and even distribution. All right. So based on.
Let me say this. This is where I don't mean to cut you off. You made me have to go deep into my family, my son. Everything you just said. That's why I said we gotta be careful with this. My son ended up on a year's probation He was 21, got pulled over. This is what they don't tell a lot of people. My son ended up having a little more than an ounce. Okay? You cannot be carrying more than an ounce on you, as they say.
Okay, so that how's that the law's fault? That's on us. That's just like here in the United States. Like I told people that I know that use cannabis, that they can't do nothing but give you a ticket if you have an ounce and under. So if you riding around with a quarter pound, if you riding around with you know what I'm saying, a couple of ounces, then you in violation of the law. So don't do it.
And I agree. And his situation wasn't quite that extreme, but I just wanted to put that out there. People need to be careful not to use this as a means to get more reckless, as opposed to looking at it as, hey, man, look, keep it recreational in the house. And if you don't, because Colorado, right, as you know, I haven't heard you mention it, but I'm sure you've read it, they're already implemented a so-called driving while high.
Right. I looked at the traffic statistics for going back to 2012 for the state, and it said that there has been no increase in traffic accidents or fatalities, that everything pretty much has remained the same. The same with the youth using it. Either they gonna use it or they not. Just cause they legalized it, all these kids didn't say, oh, they legalized it, I'm gonna go start smoking weed all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? That did not happen.
Hey, Scotty, before I get off, I just want you to answer this, and I'm gonna mute my line. Since you brought up us trying to get the exception clause out here in Colorado removed, because I'm all on board for that. And I got a friend on the phone right now.
Amendment T.
Here's what I want to know, if you could offer us some solutions. Once we vote this thing, get this exception clause out the Constitution, where do we start? You may know better. Where do we go at the local level of legislation to make sure there ain't any remnants or residual type of policies in place that we can still make sure, okay, we got it done at this level, but we need to make sure here at the city level,
let me
things can't be practiced on us.
This is how I'm looking at it. I'm sorry, what was that, Ramon?
I was saying I'm gonna mute my line.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, but again, I don't want people to start using cannabis just cause they legalize it. I do not promote the use of any kind of drugs for medicinal purposes or whatever on this program. I just don't simply do it. I will combat some of the propaganda that's out there, that's been out there for over 50 years of them criminalizing, demonizing, and then criminalizing cannabis, okay? Again, which has so many uses, industrial uses, because you got different strains of cannabis. All cannabis ain't for smoking. You can make dyes from cannabis, you can make rope, you can make clothing, you can make paper. And paper companies that have all these trees, that's another reason why they have lobbied to keep cannabis illegal, because then cannabis is called weed for a reason. It can grow like weeds. You know how hard it is to kill weeds in your yard. So that's why it got that nickname called weed. So it has industrial uses as well. But most people want to focus on the recreational use of those different of that strain of cannabis. But as an abolitionist, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the statistical records that show 94% of arrests on cultivation, that's growing it. Distribution, that's if I, grow me some and somebody want to come buy an ounce, I sell them an ounce. I can't sell them no more than that, I guess, without a license. Again, and it is important, like Ramon stated, you have to know the law, okay? Just cause they say it's legalized, look up the law. Look up the law and see what you can and cannot do so you don't get hemmed up by a slave catcher. Now, some of this stuff is on us as well. We have to take responsibility for our actions, even though we know these laws are unjust. Until we can get them off the books and what have you, then, you got to know the law. For example, I heard someone say it's illegal to smoke in a park in Colorado. You can't go to the local city park and fire up a blunt. Well, guess what? You should not be going to a local park and firing up a blunt. For children to be seeing you smoking blunts, you can't drink beer or alcohol in the park, can you? So what makes you think you can fire up a blunt? I don't think that's being unreasonable. I don't think that that's terrible, too much of a restriction on your liberty, because we have to be cognizant that we live among other people and we should take their feelings into consideration. And maybe somebody's out there having a picnic and they don't want to be smelling weed and possibly, even though it'd probably be impossible in an open air area for them to get a contact high, but they don't want to smell it. They don't want their kids to see it. So I don't have any sympathy for you if you get a ticket or whatever because you were smoking in the park. You should have abided by the law. And more importantly than the law is being a good neighbor and considering other people's feelings. Everything that you do ain't for to be all out in the public and for everybody to know that you do. Okay? So that's how I would approach that. But, it has taken a tool away from the slave catchers in Colorado, in Alaska, in Oregon, and possibly these other states. 4 other states have it on the ballot this November to legalize cannabis. Those are to make up the majority of the arrest. That make up the majority of the tickets. So that has been taken away from them. Now they got to come up with other ways and means to target us, and then we have to come up with counter. That's what counter racism is all about. It's countering what your enemy is going to do. It's not sit back and say, well, if we do this, he going to do that. Well, that's how war goes, man. We in it for the long haul, okay? And we shouldn't just simply not do things because we're going to be like, oh, the white man, he's so intelligent, he going to counter everything that we do. And he going to find a way to practice racism. Well, we're going to have to find a way to protect ourselves from racism. So that's how I feel about it. I'm looking at 70% of the 2.5 million so-called citizens locked up. Some of them are not citizens, but the 2.5 million people locked up in this country in modern day slavery, victims of human trafficking. And the vast majority of them are in there, 70% at least, in the very least, 70% are in there for non-violent, victimless drug crimes. Now, if you're an adult and you sell dope, marijuana, crack, I don't care what it is, to a child, to a minor, I don't got no sympathy for you. But if you are making a transaction between 2 consenting adults, then I afford you that liberty to do whatever the hell makes you happy. If that makes you happy, smoking crack, that makes you happy. Who am I to interfere with your happiness? Long as you don't break into my house to steal something because you can't afford your crack habit now. Because then I'm going to have to bust a cap in you. All right? And then, you might get arrested. Now you're breaking the law. Long as you stay in your lanes with your crack, you ain't affecting me whatsoever. I ain't got nothing to say about it. I definitely don't want to be paying taxes to put you into slavery to fill the pockets of the modern day slavers. Because it ain't for public safety. Again, these are diseases. These are mental health diseases and physical addictions. So these people should not be put into slavery, but be put into rehab if they're willing to go to rehab. Okay, that's the way I feel about it. I just don't think that any human being has the right to have that much power over another human being. If a person on his own land wants to grow some cannabis because he don't want to use pharmaceutical drugs. They got everybody hooked on heroin now and ODing, and so he gonna use cannabis to treat his back pain. Or she's gonna use cannabis to treat her glaucoma. And she can just grow that in her yard or grow it in her house. What kind of person want to tell that person, no, you can't do that, and in fact, I'm going to put you into slavery if you do that? That's an evil person. And I'm being nice with my words because I don't want to use profanity. But that's an evil person. That's a person who who are so full of themselves that they know everything and they know what's good for other people. Yeah, we know smoking crack is bad. But instead of me putting somebody in prison, why don't I give them a pamphlet on why smoking crack is bad? Or tell them about some resources out there to go get some help for their crack habit. And then at the end of the day, how is all of this dope getting into this country? Again, the DEA had a deal, probably still got a deal with the Sinaloa drug cartel of Mexico, allowed them to smuggle dope to Chicago, and you know they brought guns too, which would be a good segue to my next story of some of these I'm gonna try to use proper terminology. I don't like sometimes using the enemy's propaganda to refer to our people. But let's just say some of our misguided street soldiers out there that's out there committing crimes of survival, and violence is included in it because they ain't figured out that the violence draws the attention to you, which leads to put the slave catcher on your scent and what have you, instead of conducting your business behind closed doors and not being a nuisance to everybody else. So, but when I see the U.S. government, and this is no secret, and then we've known it since at least the 1980s, the U.S. government, these intelligence agencies allow these drugs and other stuff to come into this country so that they can then seize money and seize, all kind of stuff and fund their off the book, dirty, military activity against, funding terrorists like ISIS, funding, what they call them, what did they used to call, they had a name, the death squads down there in South America. So before I say somebody ought to be in slavery for using some freaking drugs, then, that's not justice when the people most responsible for the drug, for them getting access to the drugs are not serving any time. And they get to walk around like they're outstanding citizens and patriots and all this and that. And here they are, nothing but global drug dealers, locking up millions of people for something they allowing to come into this country. So that's how I feel about that. Anything we could do to take the tools away from the slave catcher being able to put people into slavery for victimless crimes. So let me, I missed my break. I'm going to go ahead and take a station identification break, and I'm going to hit that story. I had another story I wanted to share first, but I'm going to hit that story. What about all this violence that's going on in Chicago? Again, some of the street soldiers out there saying it's like they dropping crates of guns off in the hood. And another thing, I don't ever want to hear anybody call in any show I'm a part of talking about some black on black crime. And we need to stop black on black crime so that we can defend ourselves against whoever. I don't hear y'all going to white people talking about stop all this white on white crime so we can come together and fight these people who are stealing our liberty and freedom and all this and that. No. They ain't trying to put no condition that everybody has to be behaving the same way. A criminal gonna do what a criminal gonna do. How am I responsible for what another man or woman does? And then a lot of times in these hot spots, which tend to be urban areas, people keep overlooking the fact that studies have shown that many of these people have been poisoned with lead. Flint ain't nothing new. That's been going on for I don't know how long. Lead was in the paint. If lead was in the paint, lead was in the dust in these old homes and whatnot, built in the 1950s and 60s and what have you, even 70s. A lot of people have been poisoned by lead in this country in those urban areas. And guess what is a side effect of being poisoned by lead? where your brain matter is destroyed and severely impacted. Violence is. They have been doing studies tracking children impacted by lead. And it's showing that a lot of them engage in quote unquote criminal activity. But nobody wants to consider any of these different variables. They just want to act like black folks then lost their mind and nobody else is killing other people who look like them either. That's when they want to play the percentage game. So anyway, let me take this station identification break. The conference line is 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032#. Hit *6 and 1 to comment on air. Again, just to remind you on the network news, let me clear the caller's queue.
Q&A queue is clear.
Anytime anybody, and you can chime in again anytime you want to if you have further questions or commentary, hit *6 and 1 on the board. But let me make sure I gave out that number again, 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032#. Hit *6 and 1 if you would like to comment. I will from time to time, like now, check the chat room, as we are now also simulcasting our radio stream on YouTube. So you're listening to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, and I'm broadcasting from behind the enemy lines of USA Inc. Stay tuned.
Of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium.
You are tuned in to Black Talk Radio, new black media for the new millennium. And welcome back to Black Talk Radio News. Y'all bear with me as I'm using this new software for video streaming, and that is what I'm using also for my audio board. And I'm still learning, so y'all bear with me. I am going to have to upgrade this particular computer so that it can better handle the resource needs of this various software. That's why I might stop using Skype altogether, because Skype is just getting worse and worse. I like Skype. The audio quality is great, especially when the other person has a pair of headsets, and well, you got to have headsets to use Skype, but it's just the audio quality is great, but the software locks up too much. It requires too much computer resources. They're supposed to be working on this web-based application like we use at the free conference called hd.com platform, and so I may have to stop using Skype and until we can get that, till they get that resolved, their issues with that network. Now, I did mention I was going to go over some of these corrupt cop stories, because again, I'm out to destroy the image of the slave catcher. Now, I know there are individual people who may not wit into it as slave catchers or whatnot, but if you see all this corruption going on, and you turning the other way, and you're not turning in these people for their slave catcher brutality, well, you part of the damn problem. You part of the problem. You don't have to physically stomp somebody out, but you let it happen. You didn't report it, and you filed a false police report. So as far as I'm concerned, I would say 80% of you are corrupt, man. I only give the rookies, what do they call that? A benefit of the doubt. Then some of them, they just, man. So anyway, this is coming to you from stopthedrugwar.org. Louisiana, this is this week's corrupt cop stories. This came out October the 5th, so this was just yesterday. Louisiana cops go down in a contraband cigarette conspiracy. A Massachusetts narc gets suspended for threatening to plant dope on a teenager. See, again, What kind of dope was he gonna plant on them? Well, if it was, well, I don't know. Again, we got to take away the tools that they use to enslave people, man, and trap people. And Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.cc. Go check them out. Cops say legalizedrugs.com. And people have put a lot of thought into this policy and whatnot. And we keep getting all of these doomsday scenarios, or this will happen to everybody be smoking crack if they legalize crack. And nothing, I mean, only a small minority of people actually use any kind of drugs. Now, that doesn't include the pharmaceutical drugs, which have quote unquote legitimacy. So if they got a subscription and they hooked on Oxycontin, then that's not a problem. Anyway, in New Orleans, 2 New Orleans police officers and an Orleans County Sheriff's deputy, so it was a collaboration from between the slave patrollers and the slave overseers in the jail, but they were arrested last Wednesday for their role in an interstate cigarette smuggling conspiracy. Officer Justin Brown and Joshua Carthen and Deputy Garrett Partman are accused of accepting bribes and agreeing to protect shipments of contraband smokes across state lines. Now, if slave catchers are accepting payment to smuggle cigarettes, you think they ain't accepting payment to smuggle guns or anything else? Let me continue. The conspiracy involved at least 15,000 cartons of cigarettes from North Carolina, where taxes are low. See, they ain't even from our state, coming to our state, bringing this crime. The trio, along with 3 civilians arrested in the scheme, face a host of charges, including conspiracy to traffic contraband cigarettes, evading federal excise tax, and interstate transportation in aid of a racketeering enterprise. This go back to Colorado, though. Yes, the federal government is going to get its cut of the tax money. That should be expected. That had popped into my mind, and I forgot to mention it. So they got these jokers on evading taxes on cigarettes. Again, cigarettes, in my opinion, are a drug. They are a drug. There ain't nobody talking about putting people in prison for smoking cigarettes, are they? Or growing tobacco, are they? Just a ridiculousness, though. It's just no logic in putting people into slavery for this stuff. In Monroe, Washington, a state prison guard was arrested last Wednesday for allegedly accepting bribes to smuggle meth into the prison. Guard Michael Bolton, 31, went down after an FBI investigation using confidential sources turned up information he was accepting bribes, and then created a sting where Bowden thought he was carrying meth into the prison. He is charged with 3 counts of extortion under color of official right and 1 count of attempted distribution of methamphetamine. And like the people over there, the good people at the cops say legalized Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, they say this is one of the reasons why the drug prohibition has failed. The money sums are too great, and these people are susceptible to their greed. They seeing all these other people making money. I mean, look at the Clinton Foundation. Bill and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton raking in millions of dollars, man, through nefarious means. And they like, hey, I'm going to get paid too. So again, you will never, but again, the goal was never to keep drugs off the street. The goal was to put people into slavery who might use or find themselves in a situation where they might have to sell some drugs for survival. In Jackson, Tennessee, a former Wayne County chief deputy was arrested last Friday on charges he stole more than $7,700 from the department, including money from the agency's drug buy funds. Yeah, they're out there buying drugs under the color of the law, man, to trap people into slavery. Gerald Bayer, 62, now faces 2 counts of theft over $1,000 111 counts of forgery and 1 count of official misconduct. He's now out on a $75,000 bond. And finally, in Springfield, Massachusetts, a Springfield narcotics detective was suspended Monday for threatening to kill and plant drugs on 2 teenagers who stole an unmarked police car. Detective Greg Bigda is suspended for 60 days after video of his encounter with the youth showed he threatened to crush the skulls of one of the teens and plant a kilo of cocaine in his pocket. Local defense attorneys are now using the video to impeach Bigda's testimony in pending drug cases, and 2 cases have already been dropped. Bigda has not been charged with any crime, but the Hamden district attorney, quote unquote, continues to investigate. So of course, this is what I'm saying, man. They be planting drugs on people. They plant guns on people. They do all manner of evil. So that's this week's corrupt cop stories, brought to you by StopTheDrugWar.org. One of the other stories I wanted to share, I talked about Chicago. Let me jump to that, and I will jump to the museum, because there's not a whole lot I need to dissect on that. So we'll tackle that the last half hour, but I want to bring this story up and bring it to your attention about, quote unquote, gang members saying that the U.S. government is dumping crates of guns in Chicago. Again, this is documented. This is even documented in the Chicago courts. But again, if they want to keep something from the people, the mainstream media works with the state to suppress information so you don't know about it. They don't want to be embarrassed by that. They want everybody to have faith and confidence that these are ethical people in these government positions and not engage and not, global drug dealers and human traffickers and murderers, man. So on activistpost.com, it was published last month, but I want to share it with you because, again, somebody called in with the black-on-black crime in Chicago yesterday. Again, I will point you to the studies that some of this has to do with lead poisoning. Some of it has to do with crimes of survival because of no jobs and what have you, where these firms like Walmart may not give you a job on the outside, but hey, you go to prison, you can break down packages for us for slave wages and what have you. So anyway, Isaac Davis published this article. There is well-documented history of the U.S. government supplying weapons and arms to both friends and foe for political purposes and for profit, in addition to publicly known global arms deals to U.S. political allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia. Revelations about the rise of quote-unquote ISIS indicate that U.S. arms and military trainees have been a critical factor in the rise of the terror group. And yesterday on Tanya Free and Friends, Van called in and he mentioned, and I have seen an article about the Pentagon was paying a UK-based media firm to make these doggone Al-Qaeda, ISIS/ISIS videos. They have literally been wagging the dog on the American public. It's not funny, but it's just, I have to laugh to keep from cursing. How so many people think they know so much, and then, where did you hear that from? CNN, MSNBC. If it ain't been on mainstream corporate lying media, they don't believe it. And these people been participating in literally wagging a dog. I don't know if you've heard of that film. Go look it up. I think Dustin Hoffman was in that, where they, the media, a media company was creating a fake war on film, and they would broadcast it like, hey, people watching it on TV like they getting real battlefield reports. These people have actually been doing this. From 2006 to 2011, The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms ran a gun smuggling operation into Mexico to ostensibly dismantle Mexican drug gangs, accomplishing the precise opposite. Well, no, they accomplished what they meant to accomplish. They told you they were trying to do one thing, but no, they really had another motive, and that is to keep violence going on so that they can stay employed. All right. So, and again, they probably had deals with them. Further back in time, we have covert operations, and he goes on to mention Fast and Furious. This happened under Bush and Obama, 2006 to 2011. Further back in time, we have covert operations like Oliver North's Iran-Contra scandal of the mid-1980s. I was just talking about them bringing the crack in, and America's involvement in arming rebels in Central America to destabilize uncooperative governments. The list goes on. You know, like they took out Libya for daring to propose a united African currency backed by gold. Got to take you out, man. You undermining our funny money, our monopoly money issued by the Federal Reserve. No, we can't have that. Got to take you out. Furthermore, it is alleged that the CIA, DEA, and other government agencies have been involved for decades in the destruction of American communities by covertly shipping in drugs. Former DEA agent Sally Castillo has been persecuted by the U.S. government for seeking accountability of the George H.W. Bush administration for drug smuggling into the U.S. He would know, as he was directly involved. Former L.A. police narcotics officer Michael Rupert alleged in the mid-1990s that the CIA was directly involved in running drugs throughout the United States, corroborating information presented in the book Dark Alliance. That's the work of Mr. Gary Webb, who mysteriously killed himself by shooting himself twice in the head. Now, you know, you just really think about that, okay? You could go on and on and on documenting this. So it says, let me jump down. The list goes on and on. However, with the recent rise of violence in Chicago involving over 3,000 shooting victims in 2016 so far, it appears that another case of U.S.-sponsored gun smuggling and international destruction of inner-city communities must be at play. In a publicly available video testimony, an ex-Chicago gang member describes how crates of fully automatic firearms would regularly be found in alleyways and back streets of urban Chicago at the early hours of the morning, giving free illegal weapons to the gangs of Chi-Town, which is now often referred to as Chirac because it is a war zone. So I'm going to go ahead, and he has plenty of links. Great job, Mr. Davis, in sourcing this. You definitely know the history of the U.S. government's involvement in drug running and terror and global terrorism. But let's go ahead and listen to the video that he mentions.
Situation in Chicago, man. I'm from Chicago, born and raised there. I ran those streets in Chicago and changed my life. But I want to kind of make people aware of some things that you don't know, because you never really been out there, then you wouldn't know it. And it's going to be hard to believe, but myself, for a fact, and several others that I ran with know this to be the truth. Growing up in Chicago in the early 90s, this same situation was happening. I've been in Chicago where a person came into my house and knocked on the door to come and get me early in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and said, come with me, man, it's a crate of guns in the alley. And I got up and ran out there, and sure enough, there was a crate of guns. And during that time when we in it, you're not thinking about where did the guns just come from. You know, you never think about that type of stuff, like where did the guns come from and why are they here. But now that I'm older, I can kind of tell you that it's a diabolical plot. Nothing is stopped. The guns are still there. The guns are still being placed in these different strategic communities. It's a plan. It's not out in Bridgeview. It's not out in, Westmount. You know, they're putting it in the hundreds for sure. Yeah, they putting it on 55th. They putting it in Inglewood. 6:30 in the morning. While older people that's at work, you sleep. You're not outside. So you got the streetwalkers and the people that's out. They hustling and they out all types of day. Yeah, they're the ones that's gonna run across them. And who would go and tell the police? I never went to go tell the police when we found some guns. That don't even make sense. Why would you go tell the police? So people are wondering why so much violence. Think about it. You think about this. Okay, the police are locking people up constantly in Chicago every single day. They're taking guns off the street every single day, every day. So how is it that all of these guns just keep appearing? Where are all the guns coming from? Nobody's going to the gun store buying these guns. So where are all these guns? Now, this is another part that you don't know. I was so used to having exotic guns that I thought that was the norm. You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying far as, I don't know if are you familiar with guns, but a fully automatic handgun is almost impossible to get. You know what I'm saying? A fully automatic assault rifle, that's not common. It may sound common, but that's not common. A Uzi that's fully automatic, that's not common. So I was so used to having everything in the area that I knew of was fully. It shot fully automatic, fully. So me being 17 and 18 and in my 20s, I was so naive that I believed that's how all guns was. I seen so many different exotic guns on the street running around in different areas with the guys just running around. I thought that was the norm. So now I'm an older gentleman. I'm out here, I switch my life around. I'm living right, So now I cleared my name up and got my record sealed. And I'm going to the gun shop and I'm going to the shooting range, shooting like I'm supposed to. And I go into gun stores and I'm asking for certain guns and they looking at me like I'm crazy. Like I made that gun up. These are guns that I've seen several times in different areas that the gun stores saying, how would that be on the street? That's something that you would have to get specialized, customized. You see what I'm saying? But these guns are on the streets of Chicago. And my point to you is, yeah, we can't try to make an excuse for the kids out there shooting. And it ain't all kids, but we can't make an excuse. But I want you to look at the bigger picture. Where are they getting the guns from? It's not one or two areas. It's not one or two areas. It's everywhere. In the urban community is what I'm telling you. They're not dropping them out there in Hillcrest. They're not gonna be out there. You check in them hundreds. You check on the low end. You check in the heart of the city, in the inner city. That's where they're dropping all the guns at. That's where all the killings is happening at. That's why a lot of innocent people are getting shot, stuff like that. Because of these guns. They got guns that they can't control. They shooting these guns, letting off, man, 100 shots, man, in 30 seconds. These guns are not being bought. They don't have no gun license to buy these guns. So where are they getting the guns from? That's the question. I'm telling you right now. They've been dropping the guns off in crates for years. They've been doing it. I seen it twice in my lifetime. I seen it in 1990, and then I seen it again in 1999. I seen it with my own eyes. You can believe it or not, but that's the honest to God truth.
All right, we're going to stop it there. I do need to take a station identification break. But again, I'm glad that the writer, Mr. Davis, laid out all of that wicked history of the United States government, how they have raised funds to use to attack other non-white people and try to control them and their free will and self-determination. I mean, look at Honduras now. Look at Libya now. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican in office. The game is the same. The plan is the same. So we're talking about very evil people, but we want to focus on and look, I want to say this. I'm not going, I'm in disagreement with the brother on blaming the guns. We got to get to these young people and educate them on what's really going on. But right now, the racist media's programming is a lot stronger than ours. And what I mean by that is They have more access to that destructive media that tells them to kill each other, that teaches them to practice misogyny. I mean, come on. And then some of these people affected by lead poisoning, a deadly combination. You know, usually on, I don't think it was this Thursday. If we missed Brother Quabana today, I don't think he was supposed to be with us because he's on every other Thursday with us to talk about Clear the Airways Project, which has been working in Chicago to get that garbage, violent, lyrical content off of the public radio stations. Again, even in that instance, the FCC, the federal government, isn't doing its job. But all y'all can talk about is some black on black violence without asking what are the root causes of this violence and what are the contributing factors and where are these guns coming from? This is one of the most gun restrictive cities in the nation. You would think the ATF, they got a bunch of incompetent fools over there at the ATF? That's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms that they can't figure out who's smuggling all these guns in. Oh, they might be doing it. Just like they was part of putting them guns into Mexican communities into the hands of gang members. So you come at me with some black on black crime and looking at the very bottom rung of the ladder, then I'm just not trying to hear that. Because all you're doing is regurgitating the propaganda that has been programmed into you by racist media. These poor crackers around here with their EBT cards and what have you, they commit violence against each other too. All people commit violence against people who look like them. And it's a shame, and we want it all to end. But the fact is we're not going to be able to end it. But let's not use crime as a smear against black people, which they do that so to justify our enslavement. Oh, they just a bunch of savages. They belong in slavery. They need supervision 24/7 because they just little monkey children. People need to wake up, man. And you're not going to get this information from Don Lemon on CNN. Anderson Cooper ain't going to talk about it. Y'all do know Anderson Cooper, former CIA, and they not even trying to hide that. This is nothing new. This has been going on for decades. So let me take the last break of the program. I shared a whole bunch of, I think, important articles that I'm not going to have time to get to today, but my profile on btrcommunity.com is public, so you can see the different news items that I posted for today. But I'm going to take a station identification break, and then when I come back, we'll jump on the main topic, talking about who funded this African American museum and why did they fund it. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, broadcasting from behind the enemy lines of USA Inc. We'll be back on the other side.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Black Talk Radio since 2008, providing new black media for the masses. And welcome back to Black Talk Radio News. So let me jump to the main story that has been on my mind today. Again, I was happy to get that report from the listener who went to the African American Museum and told me, no, bro, they did not just start with the enslavement of Africans, but they took it back to the American Revolutionary War, which I know from my own research and I didn't pull it. I didn't pull it out of a public school approved textbook. I had to research this, and we got a lot of researchers that publish their material online that work at these colleges and stuff, and it just never sees the light of day unless you come across it on the internet and what have you. So I know that the Continental Army was losing. There were 9 major battles in the Revolutionary War. The genius, and I call him old George Rottenmouth Washington, who we're told was this genius military strategist. He was a racist as well as being an enslaver, and he didn't care if you weren't enslaved. If you were a free colonist, you still couldn't join the Continental Army because I hate black people and I'm gonna practice racism. So they were getting their behinds kicked by the British and the formerly enslaved Africans and Ethiopian troops that they brought here. And they were wearing them white boys out. Okay, they lost first 6 of the major battles. Then George Washington was like, man, we getting our behinds whooped. I'm going to have to set aside my racism for a moment, and I'm going to lift the ban against black people serving in the Continental Army. So 1/3 of the Continental Army, once that ban was lifted, was made up of free black colonists as well as enslaved Africans. And they won the last 3 major battles. And so this nation would not even exist if not for black people and their guns and their ability to fight. And I was happy to hear. Now, I don't know if they got into that kind of depth and what have you, but at least they did start with recognizing black people who fought for and won against the British to establish this nation. And, whatever reason, those racist enslavers snuck off to Philadelphia and had a constitutional convention and created this nation without any input from the other people who made it possible. See, this is why they don't want you to know our history, because it exposes their history. It exposes how evil, how conniving, how despicable, just worse, man, the worst people that you will read about in history. But you don't know that because they've been given a makeover. Okay? So I'm so happy that this museum exists so that people, white, black, whoever, goes in there and they will find out some truth. This is why a lot of people believe in a false religion, and black people too. Non-white people believe in white supremacy. Yes, they do. They believe in the supremacy of white people because they look at the history books and all the programming and they don't see themselves doing anything great. They don't know the first person to fall and start the Revolutionary War was Crispus Attucks, a black man who only got a statue in Massachusetts and Boston because of free black people paid for him to have a statue marking that he was the father of the freaking American Revolution. And so they don't know these things, so they get this into their head that we are superior. We are better than them. We are, and then see if they go up in there, they're going to get a shock to the system. Might have to carry them out on a stretcher or something, as they realize that they've been lied to all their freaking lives. And that's all people on the planet have a false version of history of this continent and of this nation. So, that's invaluable right there. Propaganda and all propaganda doesn't necessarily have to be a negative connotation to it. And it also doesn't mean that you're lying. Propaganda just refers to any type of media that relays an ideal, okay? A political point of view, whatever. That's all propaganda is. It can be bad, they got different names for it. I forget, white propaganda, black cop propaganda, and what have you. So yeah, I've done that kind of deep studying into it. And so this museum has tremendous propaganda value. Propaganda value. So let's take a look at who made this museum possible. Like I mentioned, you had two black billionaires give the motion towards making this happen, as well as the other black billionaire of the technology investment firm called Vista Equity Partners, Mr. Robert F. Smith, who donated $20 million. So Oprah gave $21 million, and he gave $20 million. So those are the two top donors. And so I'm pulling up the page for the founding donors on for this museum. Let me see. And some of these names are people that and organizations we suspect of practicing racism, practicing genocide, engaged in 21st century slavery and human trafficking. So they got what's called the Pinnacle donors, 20 million and above. The Lilly Endowment Incorporated, I don't know who that is. The Robert Frederick Smith, he gave 20 million of his own money, seems like, out of his pocket. And the Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation each gave 20 million. Capstone donors, 10 million and above. The Atlantic Philanthropies, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we know what they've been up to in Africa, and these people I think are eugenists. And then you got the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. I think they fund a lot of public media on NPR. I haven't listened to NPR in a long time, so I don't know where they're getting their funding from. The Rhimes Family Foundation, David M. Rubenstein, they all gave 10 million and above. Cornerstone donors, 5 million and above. 3M, that's a technology company. American Express, the Boeing Company, the Ford Foundation, General Electric, which, if I'm not mistaken, some of its subsidiaries utilize prison slave labor. Robert L. Johnson, I think that is the founder of BET before, and he sold it to Viacom, and now he has a seat on the board of Viacom. Michael Jordan and his family, Kaiser Permanente, that's a health company, healthcare company, the Rockefeller Foundation, Smithsonian Channel, Target, they utilize prison slave labor for sure, United Health Group, and Walmart, another prison slave labor utilizer. Keystone donors, 2 million and above. Now, I'm going to stop reading all of these because it's a lot. But 20th Century Fox and News Corporation. So Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, the racist over there with the racist propaganda, has given money for this museum. Bank of America also utilizes prison slave labor. I could go on and on and on. Most of these major corporations, a lot of them are engaged in prison slave labor. This is just pathetic, man. The National Players Association, a couple of fraternities gave about $1 million and above, but under, let me see, 2 million. So, I mean, it's a lot of people that gave money to make that happen. And they still have some pending documentation, I guess is what it says, as this list is current as of September 13th of this year. So Wells Fargo was on the list, another one using prison slave labor. So anyway, I'm glad that they gave this money, but we should not be saying, I'm not thanking them for a damn thing, because they gave the money as a PR move, as for public relations, because they want to counter New Abolitionist Radio and Black Talk Radio Network putting out information about them using prison slave labor. Like we called out AT&T CEO Randall Stevenson the other day talking about Black Lives Matter. Then, damn it, why are you practicing slavery against black people in the prisons? Okay, why are you not paying them a fair wage? Which reminds me, I don't think I answered Ramon's question about removing the exception clause. This is my thinking. If you remove the exception clause from, let's say, the state of Colorado, and they can, well, let me use North Carolina. This is something that I'm working on. looking for some people to get involved, some legal organizations. But slavery was abolished in North Carolina by the North Carolina Constitution. The only thing that has an exception clause in it is involuntary servitude, where you say, well, what might be the difference? Well, I'm looking at it from the legal standpoint of involuntary servitude shall be prohibited except for punishment for crime, means that if you are in prison as punishment for crime, you are going to work. We can make you work. But since the first section or the first sentence says slavery shall be prohibited, period, so that means the North Carolina Constitution is making a distinction between what's slavery and what's involuntary servitude. So simply making you work doesn't mean that you're a slave. But the powers that be in North Carolina are in violation of the state constitution because they're not paying these people a fair wage, whatever the labor market wage is, even if it's the North Carolina minimum wage or the federal minimum wage. But if they doing call center work, they should be paid at least, I would say 80%. I'll go 80% of what somebody on the outside would be paid. Do these prisoners not have families? Do they not have children that need support? Do they not have elderly parents who may be choosing between whether they're going to eat or buying medication? Okay? So let's not act like they don't have families. And again, 70%, at least 70% of the people that's in prison shouldn't even be there. So North Carolina is in violation of its own constitution because it's only paying these prisoners slave wages when the Constitution says slavery is prohibited. So that means you can't pay them a slave wage going by the Constitution. Now, this is something I just recently started kicking the can in my mind and just bouncing it off of other people to see if they're interpreting it the same way. Because laws are all about interpretation. All right. And so that is what I see removing the exception clause from the 13th Amendment as well as the state constitutions. Okay. So that just came to me. I forgot to mention that. So these corporations and many of these racist suspects and confirmed racists, it's all a PR game for them. And then social media plays a role in that. And also it's marketing. It's no different than them throwing Bank of America, throwing his name up on a stadium funded by tax dollars that the Carolina Panthers play in. It's nothing but marketing. Now, where it appears, have been lucky because people were raising concerns about, well, the Smithsonian is part of the U.S. government, so ultimately white people are in charge of the museum, but it appears they put a black person in charge. I can't remember his name, but I saw him when I was watching some coverage of the opening ceremony. I forget his name, but it appears that he's on the up and up. That he ain't playing games with these racists, and he's putting our real history out there and what have you. And then these people like Oprah Winfrey, like Robert Smith, who came out of their pocket with 20 million plus, these people ain't going for no BS. At least I will hope not if they're going to invest that much money into something. So don't be fooled because these corporations and these racist suspects and confirmed racists have donated money to the African American Museum. Again, it's just marketing. And that ain't reparations. And you should have paid for it. You should have paid for it. In fact, the federal government should have funded it entirely. And black veterans, who none of them are alive anymore to see it, but the Civil War veterans who without the South would have never been put down And slavery would have been abolished if not for the betrayal of Abraham Lincoln. I can't stand to even say that man's name. Disgusting. Disgusting betrayer. He deserved that bullet to the dome. It's just ironic that it came from a Confederate who he was trying to help preserve slavery, and indeed did preserve slavery for not only the South, but the entire United States through the 13th Amendment. So again, this is important. This is important. How often have people say, if you don't know where you're from, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know what happened yesterday, you can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. In history, you can also learn strategy. A lot of strategy, what worked, what didn't work. You can also be self-reflective. Where did we make mistakes at? Should the Buffalo Soldiers have helped the racist United States kill all them Indians and secure the path to the West for racist crackers so they could go settle on the land? In retrospect, no, they should not have done that. We got a history of helping these racist crackers spread racism all over the planet. It's time for that. It's time to stop. And then the whole time they practicing slavery against you. I mean, I'm just disgusted by knowing here I am in the Gulf War, in a freaking war zone, and they set my brother up and sentenced him to 10 years a slave. Well, I'm quote unquote serving the country. Wake the hell up. Don't just take a knee at the slavers' anthem. Stop fighting their wars. And that history in this music, again, we got to look at it all objectively. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And be retrospective. So that is all I have for you today as I get ready to wrap up the broadcast. Again, Tando Radio Show is not on air tonight. Blacks in Business Radio is not on air tonight. Both of the personnel and all of the personnel involved with those programs are on business engagements, very important business. And so, they got to take care of their business. So it's not like we're bringing in so much money in donations that we can pay people's salary for the good work they put in on behalf of the people. So one day we'll get there, and hopefully the BTRcommunity.com, which is a subscriber-based social media platform built specifically for black people, maybe that'll be the vehicle to us being able to actually pay people for the work that they put in. Because people should be paid for their labor. But thus far, it's been a labor of love for all of us because we care about what's happening and we know people aren't getting the correct information. And so we are trying to provide the most correct information as possible. So look for Tando Radio Show to be on air tomorrow. Blacks in Business Radio, they will be back on next week at their regularly scheduled time, Thursday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. I will be back on air tomorrow, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. We should have a guest. We should have Brother Lasana Diaspora. I'm probably butchering his name. I used to be able to say it. Diaspora. But his son, Sin-Q, was murdered by Tennessee slave catchers. We had him on the program. This was like last year or sometime. He then has a couple of events, and we brought him on to talk about the events, and they got a new event in a crowdfunding campaign to bring justice to that part of Tennessee, to help them fight in the battle of justice. Again, the wars have to be funded. Okay, so we should have him tomorrow. They do have a live event, but he said he wanted to coordinate it so he could be on Black Talk Radio News while the live event that they're hosting tomorrow is going on as well. So, calling us from the field and giving us a on-site field report or intelligence report about what's going on in Tennessee. With that said, look, slavery still being practiced. Terrorism It seems to be the norm in this country. And I'm not talking about no Islamic terrorism. I'm talking about white terrorism. I'm talking about state-sanctioned terrorism. So you have to develop battlefield awareness. There are no foolproof tactics or methods. Sometimes you just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong individuals and things happen. But there's still no excuse not to take certain precautions. Taking certain precautions. Know what you are doing behind these enemy lines. Know what is going on around you at all times as much as possible. With that said, y'all, everyone be safe out there in slavery. Peace and blessings to all.